Hey guys, WebDevWolf here, and today I'm here to show you how to set up a streaming complete setup on a budget, just like I've done. So I'm going to show you how I've got mine set up, and I'm going to show you the science behind why it works. So we're going to do this in 3 parts. We're going to look at sound, then we're going to look at lighting, and then we're going to look at equipment. So let's jump in. Okay guys, so first we're going to look at sound, or more specifically we're going to have a look at sound deadening. So, the reason I'm stood next to a plain wall here, as you can see, this is the room that I stream in, and it has no sound deadening on the wall. However, if you watch any of my streams, you will notice that you can't hear any external noise. Now I'm going to give you a quick science lesson to tell you exactly how that works. So, sound is what we call directional. So, as I'm speaking to you now, my voice is rippling out from my voice cords. Well, from my vocal cords, sorry. And that's sort of going in a 360 directional motion. So, the reason people outside this room can't hear me is because the second my voice goes from here and hits this wall, it's then got to travel through the wall. And the wall is what is doing what we call dispersing the sound and deadening the sound. So, this is why when sounds come through on a wall, they're sort of dull and muffled, etc. So, proper sound deadening is actually really expensive. And if you live in a house like me where I house share and I can't actually physically do anything to the walls and put anything on the walls that isn't approved, like sound deadening for example, because it'll damage the wall, I've had to do it another way. So, if I were to put my hand on the wall like this, and sound was to travel through, you'd find that if I put my ear here to my hand, the sound would be muffled. Not just because my ear's covered, but because the sound is now having to travel through 2 layers. It's having to travel through the wall, and it's also having to travel through my hand. So, with that in mind, how do you think I've put my sound deadening together? Well, first thing you can do, and it's really obvious but some people may miss it, is make sure that your door's closed, because then sound isn't travelling through an empty space, it's travelling through an extra surface, which is the door. Now, how about the rest of the room though? So I've got this one big patch of blank wall here, which is where most of my sound comes through. However, I'm going to spin the camera around and you can have a look at the rest of the room. And you can see exactly why my sound deadening works. Okay then guys, so I'm going to start with what you're familiar with. This is what's behind me when I stream. So you'll notice there's a picture on the wall there. There's a radiator cover on the radiator. There's a bookcase there. The bed's backed up against the wall. So is the wardrobe, so are the drawers. And so is all this, and there's also a fair bit on the walls as well, as you can see here, so shelves and things. And that's my actual setup there. And then if we spin you around so that we're behind me, you can see that there's the telly that's bolstered up against the wall, and also this big unit here. And then we come back round to the door and to the poster. So, now let's have a chat about why this works. Okay folks, so the reason this works in here and the reason why bolstering everything up against the walls works is because whenever noise hits the wall, hits any of these walls, it then has to travel through all of the rest of the other furniture as well. So that gives the room a natural sound deadening. So I don't actually need to put sound deadening on the walls. The only part of the wall where I may need sound deadening in the future if I change my mind, or if by some miracle the people I live with allow me to do so, would be this part of the blank wall here, which is my biggest open space. But the rest of the room has pictures on the wall, it has furniture up against the wall, and all of that absorbs the sound. The other cheap solution you can use if you are able to pin things on the wall is standard egg box crates. And the reason for that is the material that those are made of are really absorptive. They take all the sound in, and actual sound deadening has the same shape as well, because it then deflects the sound out to the rest of the room as well. So, that's sound covered. Let's move on to lighting. Okay folks, so next one, lighting. Have a look at where I'm stood and have a look at how dark my face is at the moment. Okay? That's because the light is behind me. Okay? Now as you can see, my actual lighting isn't that expensive. It's just an old 80s lamp. But what makes it more effective is if you have a look at where these lamps are actually pointing. They're pointing up towards the ceiling. And the ceiling is, you can't see it at the moment, but it is actually painted white. So light travels in the same way to sound, just on a completely different frequency. So when it hits the ceiling, it bounces back down and gives me the glow that it gives me. So if I were to have these lamps pointed directly at me, which I won't do at the moment because they're actually boiling hot because they've been on for a few hours, but if I put my hand up here, and you can see how my hand's pretty much gone white on camera now, and the rest of them is dark, so you can see the difference there. There's too much what we call glare. So by bouncing the light off the ceiling and back down again, we're able to use a much cheaper light source that isn't hitting us directly in the face. The ones that you can buy that are really expensive, they're actually what's called a soft light. So that means that they can hit your face and they can hit all of your body and they won't glare back. However, this is the next best thing. So with that in mind, let's take a look at some of the equipment that we use. Okay folks, so this is me here at my desk and this is the setup, all that I use for all of my streaming. So first thing I'm going to show you is one of the most important things. Actually, it's just off screen, and that's the laptop down here. So the reason I have my laptop up on my desk is so that I can have two screens. As soon as I flip this up, I've got cheap access to a second screen. It's not the biggest screen in the world, it's not the best screen in the world, but that's absolutely fine because all that goes on that screen is my chat. This is the important one right here. So this monitor is a 4K Predator, which actually is the same make as the laptop. It's also 3D as well, as you may have seen there as it came on, so just in case I do want to do anything in 3D I can. So so the next thing, so that's the obvious, isn't it, for gaming, to have a PC in the first place. Next thing we're going to look at is the cameras, which are just up here. So you'll notice that I actually have more than one camera. And the reason I have more than one camera is because when I'm on screen, there's two different, there's actually two different camera screens that I use. So on my big main screen where it's a headshot of the camera, I use a Logitech Pro C920, which is probably one of the most expensive things in this whole setup, along with a microphone, which I'll discuss with you in a second. So this is a 1080p camera, and because I have the video practically full screen, apart from the overlay, the resolution's really important. However, this one here is just a little £10 camera, and it's only 720p, and the reason I can get away with that is because if you look at the screen where I'm gaming, my actual camera is only about sort of this big on the screen, so it actually omits it looks like it's emitting at the same quality as this one. Now if I were to put that one down to that size, obviously the quality would be better, but it still gives a really good picture. So that's all of the camera footage if you want to put camera stuff on. Now you may want to do what's called a gamma reduction. So a gamma reduction is where you have a green screen basically. So this is how they do things in the movies, where they want to remove backgrounds. If you have a pop-up screen that's one colour behind you, you can then tell your streaming software to remove that colour and it'll take that away from your camera. Personally, I don't want to do that because I don't want to clutter my room up. You've seen it small enough as it is. But with clever overlays and clever graphics, you can get around things like that. You don't have to have the gamma reduction on the camera, but it's there as an additional option if you wanted to. So, moving on to the next piece of expensive kit that I've got in my arsenal, and that's my Blue Snow microphone. So now, what you've got to think about microphones is the better the microphone you buy, the better your sound deadening will have to be, because the more noise that it's going to pick up in the general area. There's a lot of microphones out there that do try and reduce sort of background noise and things like that, and there are different settings you can put it on. However, for a good balance, I'd recommend this one any day of the week. So it doesn't tend to pick up all my external noises because of my deadening setup and everything. It just tends to pick up my voice. So the direction is really important as well. You'll notice that this microphone is actually tilted up ever so slightly, and that the leg here is on the back. So if this leg were to be on the front, it would be absorbing some of the sound, and not as much sound would go into the microphone itself. And again, remember what we said about sound being directional. So when I'm talking, my voice is projecting forward out here. So by tilting the microphone up, so it's pointed literally towards my vocal cords, it gives me a much clearer sound. If I were to point that down, I'd get a very flat sound. This way, I get all of the tones, I get all the 3D type, the bass and the treble and the mid-tones and those sorts of things, so you can hear me clearly when I'm talking. So, next and final thing. There's been a lot of talk lately about Stream Decks. And Stream Decks are fantastic, big, you can switch screens on them, you can have them sat here. And yeah, I would recommend them, but they're over £100 to buy. So, here's the solution that I came up with. This is a Corsair, this is a cheap Corsair keyboard, it's a K55. And you can get these for something around £20 to £30, something like that. You'll notice that it's got what's called the macro keys down the side here, where I've got my little post-it notes. I've set up Streamlabs OBS to have a keyboard shortcut for switching to each scene, because I've got about 4 or 5 of them now. Well, 5 actually. And so now, when I set my macros up as well, that means that all I have to do is press an individual key and it'll switch scenes for me. And that's using the keyboard that I already have, which is pretty neat, isn't it? so I don't forget what they are, I've literally just cut up a post-it note, pop that on the side so it tells me exactly what I'm using there, so that I don't forget. Over time, hopefully I'll remember and I can get rid of them and it won't look as ugly. But that's a nice cheap way of putting a Stream Deck together. And I suppose the only other thing to mention is obviously the backlighting down here. That's just a personal preference. Obviously streamers don't see it. They don't see the colour changing keyboard either, but that's just for me because I like pretty things. So, and just a little bit of a gaming mouse there as well, which again helps with the actual gaming, which is important. So, you know, there's no point scrimping on all of your other bits when you've just paid a fortune on a mic and a fortune on your sound deadening and everything else. You may as well have all the kit for your gaming as well. So that's how I've put all of my streaming stuff together on a complete budget. Hopefully, now that you've got this guide, you can go and do the same, and you can jump into the same world as I do. And if you do manage to, give me a link to your stream and I'll pop in and I will say hello. And hopefully you'll just get you into the wonderful world of streaming now that you've got this in your arsenal. So, as per usual, thanks for watching. Sorry it's been a while since I've been around, but the Xbox has been in for repair, which is why I haven't been around for a while, unfortunately. So I've got a schedule together now and we're looking at some indie stuff and things like that. So come and tune in on Twitch and come pop in and say hello. And see what you think and just come and have a look and see how well the setup works. But until then, take care and I'll see you soon.